Welcome back to High Country Gold and Silver. Today I have one of those specimens that makes you stop mid-sentence, because it is not just gold in quartz, it is gold riding with tellurium and bismuth in the same piece. That pairing is uncommon anywhere, and in a big, bold free gold display like this, it is the kind of material mineral collectors get very excited about. When Jason of Mount Baker Mining and Metals and Harry of Mine Operator extracted this piece from Jason's mine in 2024, they coined it the real crown jewel, and it validated the existence of the bonanza-grade pocket they have now been mining for the past 2 years. In this video, I am going to give you a slow tour of the specimen, talk about the Mount Baker district in Washington state, and then tie the textures you can see right here back to the geology that makes gold show up in chunky, visible form. If you enjoy ore specimens, mining history, and the science behind high-grade pockets, hit like, subscribe to High Country Gold and Silver, and ring the notification bell so you do not miss the next one. Alright, let's get this on the map. We'll start by zooming into the United States and then tightening down onto Washington state, which is in the Pacific Northwest, in the far northwestern corner of the lower 48. Zooming in closer, we will focus on the North Cascades, that rugged mass of mountains in western Washington, roughly north of Interstate 90 and extending into southwest British Columbia, south of the Trans-Canada Highway. This is steep glaciated country, sharp ridgelines, avalanche chutes, cirques, and short summers, where access can be measured in weeks, not months. Zooming in closer now, we will pause in Whatcom County, east of Bellingham. The town of Glacier was the jumping-off point to the Mount Baker district, and you can also see the namesake mountain here. Miners leaving for the district were headed to Twin Lakes, which was the de facto camp, hosting nearly 500 miners around the shores of the lakes at the heyday in the late 1800s. Now, let's reorient the view into 3D and get our bearings on the mines that made the district famous. You are looking at a district where old-timers pushed adits and stopes into mountainsides that spend much of the year buried in snow, and where mills, tramways, and camps were always one hard winter away from being wiped off the slope. The label calls this an undisclosed mine from the Mount Baker district, and that's because there have been issues with break-ins and vandalism at the mine. So we'll leave it at that for now. But mine locations and production figures for the district are publicly available, so we can cover some basic detail without giving away the actual location. At a high level, the district had two major producers, the Lone Jack Mine and the Boundary Red Mountain Mine. The Lone Jack was the original discovery in 1897 that lit the fuse for the district, and the Boundary Red Mountain was the largest producer through the early 1900s. Beyond those two mines, a handful of other prospects and small mines saw some limited production too. Mines like the Gold Basin, Blondin, and Great Excelsior produced small quantities of ore before becoming footnotes in the district and eventually being forgotten to time. It's in this grand alpine setting. You find a style of gold mineralization that is very vein-honest, meaning the gold lives in discrete quartz fissure veins controlled by structure, not as a diffuse smear through the whole rock. If you can find the vein and you can find where it opens, brecciates, or reactivates, that is where the grade can spike into specimen territory, like the piece we are examining today. Now that we have a good idea of the rough topography, where this specimen originated from, let's get back to the piece and dive into the mineralogy and geology. The label lists it as gold with bismuth tellurides of the tetradymite group and possible gold tellurides, all in quartz. It is a big, serious hand specimen, 16.9 by 15.3 by 9.4 centimeters, and it weighs 1,791 grams. That is not a thumbnail curiosity. That is a display-sized chunk of ore that still reads like ore, with real texture, real mass, and enough surface area to show multiple events in the life of a vein. As the specimen rotates, the first thing that grabs me is the contrast. You have bright, milky to translucent quartz acting like a spotlight. And then you have that unmistakable buttery metallic luster of native gold showing in patches and seams. Some areas look like leaf and smear along fractures, and other spots look more like knobby blebs and ragged ribbons that follow the micro-plumbing of the rock. That is exactly what free gold should feel like visually. Gold that is not locked up invisibly in sulfides, but sitting in the open, catching light, telling you where the fluid actually dropped its load. Then there is the telluride side of the story. Bismuth tellurides in the tetradymite group tend to show as steel grey to silver grey metallic material, often in platy, flaky habits. On a hand specimen, they can look like little metallic scales or splashes, and they commonly sit tight with the gold because bismuth and tellurium can travel and precipitate under conditions that also favor gold deposition. The label also notes possible gold tellurides. That matters because gold tellurides can be visually subtle, and in many districts they are the difference between there is gold here and there is a lot of gold here, because tellurium combined with gold and then drop it abruptly when the chemistry shifts. What I really like about this specimen is that it reads like a high-grade pocket piece, not just a high-grade vein chip. A pocket implies open space, or at least repeated cracking and reopening, where fluids can dump metal into a localized cavity or a brecciated zone. In practical collector terms, a pocket is where the mine stops being a gold mine and briefly becomes a specimen mine. And this is where the story gets even better, because the recovery was documented by Mount Baker Mining and Metals on their YouTube channel in 2024. So this is not a mystery rock with a vague tale. This specimen has a documented mine to daylight to soar narrative, and that provenance matters. In 2024, it was the best free gold specimen from the mine for the previous few decades, until an even larger gold specimen was recovered near the end of the 2025 season. I love that detail because it tells you two things at once. First, this mine is producing a legitimate specimen-grade ore with visible gold. And second, the system is pockety, meaning the best material comes in bursts, controlled by structure and timing, not by steady, uniform grade. And if you haven't already tuned into the Mount Baker Mining and Metals channel, see the links in the description below for the videos featuring this piece. and the incredible video from the 2025 season that documents continued exploration of the high-grade pocket. Now, let us connect what we see in this specimen to what the Mount Baker district is famous for geologically. In this district, classic descriptions of the major gold veins emphasize quartz fissure veins, hosted by metamorphic rocks like phyllite and schist, often near major structures, and often in proximity to intrusive bodies. The veins can show more than one generation of quartz. In fact, one very instructive model for this district describes an older, coarse, milky quartz that gets mechanically broken up by later movement, turning parts of the vein into microbreccia. Then a younger pulse of fine-grained quartz comes in and re-cements that broken zone. And it is that later cementing event that can carry the free gold and bismuth tellurides. That is the kind of process that creates exactly what we love as collectors: sharp localization, bright metal on fresh fractures, and that sense that the gold is painted into the reopened parts of the vein. Think about that sequence in slow motion. First, you have a fracture opening in the rock, and quartz seals it, building a thick, competent vein. Then the structure moves again. The vein does not politely stay intact. It cracks, grinds, and brecciates internally. That creates permeability again, basically turning the vein into a plumbing network for a brief moment. Then a new hydrothermal pulse arrives, and it is forced to flow through those freshly broken micropathways. If the fluid is carrying gold as a dissolved complex, and it experiences a pressure drop, boiling, cooling, or a chemical shift, gold can precipitate right where the permeability is highest. Along those microbreccia margins, within crackle zones, and into any little open space that behaves like a pocket. That is how you could get a specimen where gold is wildly rich in one zone and then drops off within inches. Some work on Mount Baker district-style veins also points to boiling as a key trigger for gold precipitation. Boiling is powerful because it changes the fluid instantly. You lose dissolved gases, the chemistry shifts, and the ability of the fluid to keep gold in solution collapses. In many vein systems, that is when gold drops out, often together with tellurium-bearing minerals. And bismuth matters here too. In a number of gold systems worldwide, bismuth and tellurium are closely tied to high-grade events because tiny bismuth-rich melts or bismuth telluride phases can effectively scavenge gold and then concentrate it, helping create those punchy, localized enrichments that we call bonanza, pocket, or specimen grade. From a mining history standpoint, the Mount Baker district is a perfect example of how brutal logistics shape what gets produced. Camps boomed, stamp mills were built, and then fires, avalanches, and the sheer difficulty of moving ore and equipment through steep terrain controlled everything. Even when veins were rich, the season could be short and the infrastructure fragile. That is why a modern documented recovery like this hits different. You are seeing the same fundamental challenge the early miners faced, but with modern tools, modern media, and a collector audience that appreciates not just ounces, but mineralogy and textures. Now, from a collector standpoint, this specimen checks several boxes at once. It has size, it has contrast, it has provenance, and it has an association that immediately pushes it into the study piece category. Gold plus bismuth tellurides, with possible gold tellurides, all together in quartz. If you collect telluride-related gold, you already know the famous names. Districts like Cripple Creek for gold tellurides, Kalgoorlie for telluride complexity, and classic European localities where tellurium minerals made whole mines refractory. The Mount Baker district is not trying to be any of those places. It is its own thing. Rugged alpine quartz veins where structure, reactivation, and chemistry combine to make pockets that can produce museum-level free gold in a setting that feels almost impossible. And that is why the label's name of the real crown jewel fits. This is a specimen that teaches. It teaches that free gold is often a structural and textural story, not just a grade story. It teaches that tellurium and bismuth can ride with gold and mark specific pulses of mineralization. And it teaches that a mine can be quiet for stretches and then suddenly hit a pocket that changes everything, including what we get to hold in our hands as collectors. All right, let us wrap this up. This is gold with bismuth tellurides and possible gold tellurides in quartz from an undisclosed mine in the Mount Baker district of Washington state. It is a large, heavy, specimen-grade piece, mined and prepared in 2024 by Mount Baker Mining and Metals, with its recovery documented on their YouTube channel. And for that mine, it stands as one of the best free gold specimen uncovered in modern times, and probably historically too. If you want to see more Mount Baker district material, or if you want me to compare this style of gold and tellurides to another district you collect, drop a comment and tell me what locality you want next. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, hit like, subscribe to High Country Gold and Silver, and ring the notification bell. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.